explain what we're doing here.
Yeah, so welcome to Historic Mill Creek. We're going to go on an adventure tour, which is a guided nature hike across this canopy bridge out there. And then we're going to continue to hike across the creek and then down the zip line back to this point. So a little education, a little fun.
And how long does that take?
It's going to take about a half hour.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Right, thanks.
So, my name's Kevin. This is John. I'm training him up to be an adventure tour guide today. So, we'll get started right here.
All right.
Did you get to see the sawmill?
No, I just got here.
All right, next one's at 11:30. I suggest you do that. It's really cool. It's one of the only operating water-powered sawmills in the country, right? Yeah, especially that style.
Yeah.
So it's a recreation from Robert Campbell's sawmill, erected in 1790. But he had more than just a sawmill here in the area. He had the first industrial complex in upper North Michigan, so he had livestock and other business ventures. He planted the first apple orchard up here on the bluff.
Okay.
And we know apples are native to Asia, so we know somebody planted them. And this is not an original because apples are a short-lived species. So this is one of the descendants. It's been populated by deer and wind dispersal and yada yada. But now these are all dotted out throughout the property. That's pretty cool. One of the descendants of the original apple orchard.
All right.
This hill I mentioned, this bluff, is not put here for fun times and exercise. No, this is a natural formation. This is the shoreline to an ancient lake called Nipissing. This is where the lake ended. That's why you see all the seashells in the limestone deposits around. You go down to Huron here.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see a seashell. You see horn corals, chain corals. You go down west, Petoskey stones. We were all underwater here for a long time. So
All right.
this is where that lake ended. Big shoreline. So swim up the shoreline. Make sure you're breathing. I don't want to drag anybody out of here. And when you do this 16 times a day, it gets easier.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Especially backwards. Morning. How you doing? Pardon us, pardon us. We're on an adventure. All right, we're at the top of that ancient lake, but right here we're at the same level as Fort Mackinac on the island, if you've been to the island yet.
Yep.
Just looks a lot taller over there because we start from a lower position, but the same lake carved out the island that carved out this place right here.
Okay.
Like I said, the rock wall's unfortunately closed due to staffing concerns, but the stairs are open. Great view up there, right? Going to the top. But if you're at the top, remember that 11,000 years ago, that was underwater too, by a large margin. That's an ancient lake called Algonquin. So even before Nipissing, there was an even bigger lake here.
Wow.
Now it's all receded back into Huron, into Ontario. Oh, excuse me. So now that massive amount of water is off the Earth's crust, we're actually rebounding here a little bit. We're gaining elevation each year. It's really slow. It's not like a catapult or anything. It's like an inch a decade. It's real slow.
Okay.
Yeah. So back into the here and now, we're on a nature walk. Teach you a little bit about some plants. You know this stuff, right?
We don't have it in Alaska that I know of, but
No,
yeah,
probably
leaves
not.
the three don't touch me. I know that
Exactly.
part.
So this is poison ivy, the famous plant that causes that contact rash. What causes that rash is a stable oil called a ruschiol. It's very stable, like I mentioned. It can be on tool handles in your garage up to 20 years. So it's in every part of this plant. It doesn't affect wildlife so much. It's very important for wildlife. It's a native plant, so we don't kill it. We just educate people as to why it's useful and why we keep it around. It puts out a nice waxy fatty fruit you might see here in the middle. But the birds love it, the deer love it, rodents especially. They all eat poison ivy.
Oh, that's the fruit. Okay.
Yep, right there in the middle. I spent a whole winter
Okay.
collecting that stuff and watching birds eat it for a project.
Well, how do you collect it if you don't touch it?
In Tennessee, where I'm from, it's a canopy layer species. So it crawls up trees, but it can't grow. It can't grow above the frost line here, so it stays on the ground. But what we did is a little 2x2 PVC pipe frame with a net in the middle, and we just come and collect the berries as they fall. Yep. And we ran a little transect. We watched the patch for 30 minutes at a time. Go to the next patch, watch it for 30 minutes. Just record what's eating it. Yeah.
Oh.
We recorded 17 or 18 bird species eating poison ivy berries. So it's really cool. Very, very good stuff to have around. little food for thought. It does share a plant family with mangoes and cashews. That's Anacardiaceae in Latin, if you want to Wikipedia it later. But
Huh,
so
okay.
those plants have a ruschiol in it as well, but not in as much concentration. So you might break out if you're sensitive to it. If not, you should be fine.
I'm not going to try.
Yeah. So what is it? Leaflets of 3. Use it for TP. No. Leave it be. If you don't know the plant, don't touch the plant. If you don't know the snake, don't touch the snake. Leave things alone. Live and let live, right?
Right.
Just because we're scared of it doesn't give us the right to kill it, right? At least I don't think so. All right, we'll get you hooked into this canopy layer grease here. Come on around here. We'll get you hooked in. Oh, yeah. For the tube, man. If you're brave, look down as we cross. But if you're not so brave, check out my helmet.
Right.
You know, it's a cool view. So a little education while we're here. You know, that's why I'm here. It's my favorite part. It's kind of my passion in life. So, well, how do you think so many plants and animals can utilize the same spot in a forest? What's going on here? Why is there not just one tree, one animal, one fish? Why is competition not so great that there's just one of everything? Any idea?
There's a term for it, and I can't remember.
That's
I
right.
can't think of it right now.
It's a broad ecological subject
Ecological.
called niche partitioning or niche partitioning. Basically, the study of how things have stratified or layered the entire forest.
Okay.
They've learned to share. Basically, they've all gone to kindergarten, learned how to share. That big process called evolution. They've all grown up here. They've learned how to use the forest. So you can think of two animals that are closely related, you know, the chipmunks and the red squirrels. The chipmunks raise their babies way underground, and the red squirrels will raise their babies up here in a tree. So there's not a whole lot of overlap there, that they can coexist. There's a whole lot of examples. That's just a quick and dirty of it. So many examples. There's a famous study with warblers by MacArthur in the 60s. He's learned that even on a single tree, several warbler species have learned to layer the tree or stratify the one single tree. So you multiply that with everything in the forest, there's different parameters to life everywhere. So niche partitioning is a big blanket term. That's an oversimplification for sure. Come on out. Think about that. Think about how different animals use different layers of the forest. Even as we get out here in the open, you're going to notice a different temperature, different wind profile, different moisture content. Some things live out in the clearing that won't live in the forest, and vice versa. Some use both, you know, they share. We're about to walk over Mill Creek here. Take your time.
I think I have a few viewers that would not not enjoy this. How high up right now?
We're about 55 feet, I do believe.
55 feet? Okay.
Whee. So we're at the canopy layer of these white spruce trees below me.
Okay.
Thuya occidentalis, if you care.
Well, that's white spruce.
Yeah.
Oh.
Little trivia, there's no such thing as a spruce in North America. It's just what the early Europeans called it. It looks like a spruce tree from the old world.
Well, there's a northern spruce. We have those up in Alaska.
Also not spruce, it's a different species. It just bears a superficial resemblance to spruces. The genus Cedrus is old world, so it's its own thing. You've heard of red cedars?
Yeah.
They're junipers. They're not cedars either.
Okay.
They just bear
well,
that
they smell like cedar.
Exactly right.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't far off the mark. It's just the geneticists say that it's different.
Okay.
You know, committees have to justify their existence.
Right.
But if you look out to your right, that's that old baby lake called Huron I was telling you about.
All right.
That's Mackinac Island out there. You can see the Grand Hotel. You can see Fort Mackinac if you kind of look. But like again, we're at the same elevation as Fort Mackinac on the island right here. It's a little easier to tell out here in the open.
Okay.
But Lake Huron is part of the largest freshwater lake by land area on the planet. Michigan Huron, that's the same lake. We just split it up because we put a fancy bridge in the middle. It's the same lake. They're not fooling me any. 20% of the Earth's fresh water is locked up in the Great Lakes system. That's Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. 20% of the fresh water is in one single lake in Russia as well, called Baikal. It's so old, so deep, so wide that it can hold the entire Great Lakes in it.
Wow.
Really cool. Big place. So the Great Lakes are very young, geologically speaking. It's basically ditches that hold water from that last major glaciation event. They came in like a big land plow. And some of those ditches hold water. That's why you have so many lakes up here.
Right.
I'm gonna have John come around. He's got the key. I'll stay on the bridge. You're fine. Excuse me. Oh, you got my key too. Go ahead and grab. Use your key just as practice. There.
Sound good.
Sounds like practice. Oh my bad. You know things are not adding up right.
That's all right. I'm gonna get unhooked here. Just because.
This bird's singing constantly. This phrase pause, phrase pause, phrase pause. Sounds like look up, see me. Here I am, higher still. That's a red-eyed vireo. It's a 6-inch bird. It's mostly gray. It's got a streak through the eye, and it's got a red eye. But he's up here to breed. There's another bird here I wanted to point out. He's going to stop singing, of course, now that I'm onto him. That one, the peewee. Have you heard that one? It's called Eastern Wood Peewee. It's one of my favorite summer sounds. Also up here to breed. He says peewee. Peewee. But these birds are up here to breed. So why do birds migrate? That's a great question to answer. Why do birds migrate? Well, you remember niche partitioning. It's just another extreme example of niche partitioning. So birds tend to overwinter in the tropics. There's a lot of biodiversity in the tropics, not a lot of wing room, you know. So they've learned to stratify or layer the entire planet. They've learned to chase the seasons up and down the latitudes. That's what migration is. They know that it warms up here. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of resources to fill. So they come up here and they get busy real quick. They make a nest. They lay eggs. In about 8 days, these red-eyed vireo babies will go out into the forest. Birds don't live in the nest. That's a common misconception. Nests are dangerous places. A predator can find you really easy. And you have all your eggs in one basket. That was a red-bellied woodpecker. That shouldn't be here, but the field guides say red-bellied woodpeckers shouldn't be here, but they're here. They just haven't been updated yet.
The birds or the guides?
Hello. Be careful on the stairs. It might be a little slippery from this morning's dew. All that algae bloom. Excuse us. We just keep bumping into each other. So we do have these little limestone outcroppings throughout the park and throughout Michigan for that matter. You know, like I mentioned, the last glaciation event came through like a big land plow. If you'd like to scoot on by, that's fine. If you want to sit around, that's fine too. So we do have bats that like to roost up in these small crevices,
Right.
Which is a great thing. Bats in general are having a bad time. They're being attacked by a fungal infection called white nose syndrome. It's very contagious. It kills the bat very quickly. It wakes them up during hibernation, which is the bad thing because they run out of their fat reserves, and that's what kills them. It's a bad thing because bats eliminate 500 insects a night per hour per bat. That's a lot of insects out of the system. So we need those guys, or we're going to inherit the United States of mosquito pretty soon. Yeah, these
Yeah.
these,
Oh no, I've been
these guys.
wiping them off myself for a
They're
while.
all over the place. So we need these little guys back. So get on board with conservation funds. Get on board with building bat boxes, putting them up on your housing and your structures. Just anything we can do helps. These
So
guys,
what's causing the white nose? Is it the limestone itself?
it's a fungus. It's a fungus, highly contagious fungus. Yeah.
Okay.
And we are the ones spreading it around on the soles of our shoes, basically. So that's why all the recreational caves are shut down right now. If they have a nesting or a roosting population of bats, we
didn't
need
know
to
they
stay
were
out of
closed.
caves as
All right.
much as possible right now.
Okay.
Because it's a bad thing. I'm hoping they're doing well. I've not heard recent numbers or studies at this point, but I think it was first identified in 2014, and it's just gotten worse since then.
All right.
Recently discovered, I guess. Same thing with amphibians. They're having a hard time with the fungus too. It's a different one. But so why is it all green here and it's not green over there and it's not really green over there? What's going on right here? What's the story? What happened?
Well, I thought moss faced north.
Not necessarily.
No?
No. That's
Okay.
just a myth.
Okay.
Yeah, North Beach that way. That's a total myth. But anyway,
Well, soil deposits, wouldn't it be?
yeah, the seeds have been deposited in the soil for sure. But what happened is we walked across this bridge and we had to cut out a canopy layer tree to do that, to install that bridge. So sunlight hit the forest floor, and
Okay.
things are quick to grab a resource that's open. If you're growing in a forest, you have to be shade tolerant. And these guys are not mostly. The fate of these guys, like the poison ivy, is going to be shaded out by trees like this in the near future because poison ivy needs sunlight. So the forest floor acts like a big seed depository, you know, like a seed bank.
Right.
And seeds just lay dormant for days, weeks, centuries, depending on the species of plant. and they're just waiting on conditions to be correct to sprout. So that's what's going on here. They're grabbing sunlight while they can.
Okay.
Yeah, that triggered the growth. Lots of it. This is a pretty young forest. That sawmill over there had everything clear cut from Mackinac City, about 8 miles down to Sheboygan.
All right.
So, standing here, we can see the island just fine about 100 years ago.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, the
Besides-
ore that was
No, go
oh,
ahead.
the ore, or not the ore, sorry, brain fart. The wood that was milled for the colonial fort and the wood for the fort, the current fort, that was all done right here.
Yep.
So, yeah. So when they were building Fort Michilimackinac, they needed a lot of wood, not only because they were constantly expanding and repairing the fort, but also because they had a lot of fireplaces. And so those consume a lot of wood.
Right.
And so by the 1770s, it's clear cut for something like 7 miles around the fort.
Okay, so this is still included in that 7 miles that they were talking about in the fort,
Yes.
as far as the,
Yeah, we're only like
open
4
cut?
miles away from where Fort Michilimackinac is.
Okay.
Now, I actually just saw the documentation for this. In 1846, a new sawmill opens up down in Sheboygan, and they're able to ship lumber from down there all the way to the island. And so they're
Oh.
transporting their lumber from Sheboygan all the way up to Mackinac Island.
Okay.
John's our millwright too. He's filling in as an ATG on some days. So
Oh, okay.
he knows all about the history. So it's a very young forest, suffice to say.
Yes, very.
Yeah. So competition hasn't settled out just yet in this forest. You can see the evidence all around. It's a crowded forest. There's a lot of overcrowding here. You see behind you especially. But right here, you see the conifer trees. They are losing their lower boughs. This is not a disease. This tree's not dying. What it's doing is called self-pruning or autotization. You know, like a lizard that pops off its tail. That's called autotization. What it's doing is not wasting time here in the middle where there's too much shade. It's shunting more resources from the roots down there all the way to the canopy where it's nice and green, you know. It's just vying for more canopy space. So
Okay.
it's a common strategy amongst the conifers here, the evergreens. This one's doing it too. Tree's just fine. It's just trying to compete better.
If for some reason the canopy layer were to open up more sunlight to that section that's already been stripped, I guess,
Yeah,
will
they'll
it grow more?
They'll grow back, yeah.
Okay.
That's typically not the case, but
Yeah.
it does happen, I guess. You can always tell how a tree grew up by the way it looks. You know, sometimes you see oak trees that grew up in a crowded forest are all straight, skinny, not a lot of lower boughs. But if you see a nice white oak that grew up in the sunlight, it's just spread out all over the place. It's like, sun.
Yeah.
It's great. Mill Creek, we're kind of in the dry season. They would have been running that sawmill for hours a day during the spring melt, you know, when the water level's up. So,
So it's during spring melt, how much does this rise?
up here at the banks. Yeah, when I got here in May, it was rushing.
Okay.
And right now, it's almost a trickle. About by late August, it's going to be even less than that. So, it's just a cycle.
Okay.
It is a unique creek. It's the only creek in the area with enough fall or elevation from the headwaters from Dingman Marsh all the way down to the sawmill in order to generate enough power to power that mill. So
Okay.
it's unique in that respect. Also, it's unique that Robert Campbell was here and had enough business wherewithal to get the thing started. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Michilimackinac, Fort Mackinac, I guess Fort Mackinac itself is very lucky that Robert Campbell was around. Had that business know-how. I would have been like, hey, I've got a nice creek. So here's a question. What's all this stuff growing on the trees you've been seeing? This
Lichen.
Yeah, exactly. Powdery stuff. This stuff looks like dead leaves, foliose lichen. There's 4 major types of lichen. But what is a lichen, do you know? What is it, generally speaking?
Generally, it's a fungus.
It's part fungus. Yeah, that's half right. So what a lichen is, it's a symbiotic organism. The whole is not the sum of its parts, you know, it's weird. So it's part fungus. The fungus is providing housing and support, and the photosynthetic organism, whether it's an algae or a cyanobacteria, is providing glucose, you know, photosynthesis food. It's converting carbon dioxide and sunlight into those simple sugars called glucose. And they live together, so you can think of it like Freddy Fungus took a liking to Alice Algae, and they lived together on a tree there. Ancient monks. And they live on the ground. They live on this rock over here. It's estimated that 8% of the Earth's surface is covered by this stuff, so it's all over the place. Reindeer up north, their main food diet is a lichen called caribou moss. It's not a moss, it's a lichen, but you get it. A lot of common name issues with botany. But it's not a disease. It's growing on the tree bark, and the bark is dead itself, just like our skin cells. It's dead. We're living just beyond our skin. Same thing with the tree and the xylem and phloem, the nutrient ladder there.
Okay.
But it's a good bioindicator for us. They don't have kidneys, they don't have lungs, so if there's anything toxic in the air, these guys will die and be like the canary in the coal mine and tip us off like there's something bad in the air we need to look for. So it's good to have around. The North Woods are a hot spot for lichen diversity, so they're all over the place. And we call them varieties of lichen. We don't really say species of lichen because it is a symbiotic organism. You can't say this is a cat, this is a dog with a lichen because it's variable. All different stuff.
Now, is it
Yeah.
true that lichen only grows in humid areas?
No, not at all. It's 8% of the Earth's surface covered in this stuff. Yeah, it's all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, strange environment. Some is very slow growing, some are very fast growing. It's very variable. You're going down the highway later, you'll see the big green ones on the trees. That's called green shield, and it's really, really common. It's really fast growing.
Okay.
And it grows in the more polluted places, honestly, so it's a little more tolerant. Have you seen these guys before? I don't know where you come from. I mean,
I'm
originally
from Alaska.
Alaska, right? So
Yeah.
you don't have
Most
these
of my
guys.
viewers
maybe.
are
This
they're
is-
from all over, so
This
I
is
have no idea.
thimbleberry. Have you heard of thimbleberry?
I've heard of it, never seen it.
Yep. This is the locally famous thimbleberry. It's related to raspberries really closely. It's just it's a lot softer. It doesn't travel well, so it doesn't get propagated as a major like jam or anything. But locally,
Okay.
it gets produced as jam, and it's really tasty.
Is
But
it?
here in about I don't know three weeks, maybe more, maybe less. These are gonna be red and shaped like a thimble, flat on top. Really good stuff. So if you're around, I don't know what your travel itinerary is. Come on back. You'll be gone. You'll be like in South-
There's another schoolie meetup at the end of this month.
Okay.
That's on the lower coast of.
Oh, you call yourself schoolies?
UP.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, school buses converted to motorhomes. They're called
That's awesome.
schoolies. Yeah.
We were all admiring the bus earlier. Like, this is cool.
Oh well. You're welcome to take a look inside.
Really?
Yeah.
I would love to. Got some time.
Yeah.
So what made these holes in the tree? It happened when the tree was alive.
Well, it's birch.
Yep.
So
Put that back over there.
that would be. I'd say probably woodpecker.
You're right. Good
Yeah.
job. People are always quick to say bugs.
No,
no, that's it.
that's the spruce and the pine.
Yeah, right. So woodpeckers made this hole. It's a special kind of woodpecker. It's called yellow-bellied sapsucker, which is fun to
Okay.
say. That's the bird's name. I didn't make it up. So what it does is it gets on a tree, pecks a horizontal row of drill wells in it, goes to the next tree, does the same, and comes back and checks that first set. They're not after the sap at all. They're after the insects that get caught in the sap. So they're making insect traps. They're not after the sap at all. So
Huh.
it's kind of a misnomer, but yellow-bellied sapsucker sounds like a dandy insult to your enemies. If
Right,
you're
yep.
So also, hummingbirds have learned to use sapsucker drill well holes, not to get sap, but again to eat insects. So, well, not a lot of people know that hummingbirds eat insects, but there's a whole lot of protein flying around in the air. So,
Oh yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
of course they eat insects. They prefer the sugar water.
Not the red stuff.
No, not the red stuff.
They hate the red
That
stuff.
causes renal failure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a nice little tree if you're into planting gardens, especially in the north here, or in the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountains where I'm from. This stuff grows there too. It's called striped maple. See all the striping on the bark here, especially on the younger ones, very striped. It's an ornamental plant. Turns a bright yellow in the fall. It's very, very wildlife attractive, good for birds.
Okay.
Doesn't live very long, doesn't get very high. You see this one's already dead. It's not, that's about as high as it gets, way up there.
Oh. Okay.
This is Acer pennsylvanica. This is striped maple or goosefoot maple. You see, it looks like a webfoot.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a nice plant to have around. All right, I want you to think about what birds you want to be coming down the zip line here. Have fun
Well,
with
I
it.
don't want to hit one head on. That's for sure.
No. John, if you would close the gate behind you, please.
I've seen what it does to windshields.
Yep. All right, come on up. I'll get safetied up here first.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna shut it off for this because I don't
Okay.
have a mount for this.
Okay. Oh no. Extra tour.
Ah, that's what the stick's for. Okay.
I'm glad you got to hang out with us today.
Yeah.
Hold on tight.
Ta-da. Pretty fun?
Cool.
Good.
Oh,